this out here as soon
Three,
as you post as
two.
well.
Oh, you're a legend. I can get if you want me to track down the link, I can. But looks like we
I
are
got it right
live.
here.
Right on. Here we go. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Wolf Crypto. Welcome to our trading streams. We're sort of just building out this series, trying to take people, including me, from a place of I can read charts and stuff to I can totally trade this now. That's kind of the goal, to go from here to here and take people along with us. So we're bringing on people who are just good at their stuff. They've been doing it a long time, a lot longer than I have, and they got little nuggets of advice that I think are super helpful, and try and get a peek into people who are trading and have done it for so long and aren't just moonboying into things. Like, I'm trying to draw this distinction. It looks and feels like in crypto right now, if you're trying to just trade and you don't know what you're doing, you're getting rinsed left and right. And I've gotten rinsed left and right as well. I converted some Bitcoin into altcoins and got wrecked. So like, I am just in that same crowd. And I realized that you have got to figure out your edge, and you've got to be able to at least kind of understand the charts to survive this next year. I don't think the answer is to sit it out. I do believe staying in the market is still a good decision, but knowing your stuff a little bit and picking up things along the way. And Bits said this, actually, it was maybe a comment or something on a space, but he mentioned that if you're just trying to trade this market for this 1 year part of the cycle, that's not the mentality you want. You want to build a skill set that is going to last your whole life. And so that's kind of the goal with these streams and spaces and stuff. So we got Bits and Wealth, a regular on the channel, on the show today. Bits, welcome, man. It's great to have you. Oh, wait, you're muted. There's no way. We were good.
Oh, there we go. Oh, my bad. I've got a little manual switch on my headset, like a little on-off thing as well, and I toggled it just to make sure I wasn't gonna cough or something while you were kind of opening it up. But yeah, no, I was just saying, man, I always appreciate the you guys extending the invite to participate on spaces or on these streams. Wolf and Wolf Crypto is such a good bunch, an amazing community. I mean, I really been enjoying the community and just how people are engaging in the comments with the spaces, dropping questions. It's so, I don't want to say rare, because there are pockets of this, but it's very refreshing when you find communities in crypto, on Crypto X or Crypto Twitter, whatever we're calling it nowadays, that aren't really leaning into like the drama and just all the toxicity and everything else that you kind of see happening on X right now, but are just really focused on education, learning, leveling up, working together as a community. So it's refreshing, man. It really is.
Again, man, it's been great having you on, and hopefully we'll continue to have you on. So for people who, because on the stream you've been on a few times already, but how would you describe yourself in terms of a trader, how you look at the market, and I guess how you identify if you were at like a trading conference or something, and you're trying to describe like in 30 seconds or a minute, like what kind of trader you are, and also maybe how long you've been a trader and things like that, just so people have a bit of an understanding before we jump into some of the charts and stuff.
Yeah, for sure, man. So I first got started in like the stock market and doing investments and stuff when I got going with my career. I was building up a 401k, so I was interested in like what was that going into, instead of just like I'm giving it to these people and they're managing. I wanted to know where it was going. I was fortunate to work under some guys that were also just really into finance and investment, so they would give me like little pointers and stuff while I was kind of coming up in my career. And so I got really interested in that. And then I found Forex a few years after that. And, this was like in my mid 20s or so. And I found Forex, and I started looking at like options and wanting to learn some of that. I spent a lot of time on this website called babypips.com. Which back then used to be a great resource. I haven't looked at it in a while. I don't know what, but they had a full course like that you could go through with modules of what is a chart, what is a candlestick, what are the patterns, what are support, resistance, what are trends, like everything that you needed to get started, right? And I got really interested, and I discovered, I say discovered because I had friends that were telling me about Bitcoin for a couple years before I actually paid attention. But when I finally decided that I wanted to look into Bitcoin and Ethereum and crypto, was around 2017, when it was just everyone was starting to talk about it. This was probably summertime of 2017 or so, maybe late spring. And I bought my first BTC purchase back then.
Wow.
Basically bought all the way to the top, and probably top blasted a little bit as well, and then just saw it absolutely collapse, that following year, opening up into 2018. And the whole thing was just like this eye-opening experience, and I realized that I didn't know anywhere near enough to win at this game, but I was fascinated by it. I was fascinated
Mm.
that, I was buying BTC at like somewhere between 3 to 5K, and that it got all the way up to 20K. And that I would have had the opportunity if I had, been tuned in enough and was knowledgeable enough that I could have like played that so incredibly well. But instead, I bought some at 17. I think I bought some at 19, and then I wrote it down. Right. And it was just this eye-opening experience for me. Like, man, I just don't know enough. I'm not prepared. I'm gonna get wrecked. Like if I
Mhm.
keep just trying to guess, right? So having already a little bit of exposure to Forex and options and understanding some of that and just traditional investments, I was like, all right, I need to find like a course on like I need to learn technical analysis. I need to understand like how could I have seen potentially either before it happened or after it happened that this thing was topping out, right? And so I just started buying a bunch of courses, man. Started just buying courses left and right. I started, consuming everything on YouTube that had to do with trading. I joined some communities, and I slowly started getting little bits and pieces, and I started kind of like mastering some like basic retail patterns, right? I guess you could say. So, I got to a point where, if I was looking at something, I could say, okay, look, I'm going to draw a trend line on it or whatever. And if it breaks the trend line, and if it were to like, if it were to come up here, break that and then retest, could I play this retest, like the break and retest? Could I play that successfully over and over? And we went into some markets in 19 that panned out pretty good, and I was able to kind of maximize some basic retail strategies of just like basic support resistance stuff. But I think like with most things, you realize that you get little like beginner's luck streaks,
Mhm.
and they run out pretty quick, and over time you gotta keep leveling up, as you're growing your bags. You gotta make sure it's your level of skill is growing just the same. One of the big things that, and this is kind of like off topic a little bit, but it's something I want to talk about because I think it goes back to the topic of like this whole stream. Um, y- y- if you're just, like you mentioned in the intro, if you're looking to do this temporarily and just kind of capitalize on a short-term thing, there's absolutely some opportunities there. And I think if you're in the right groups, you're around the right people, big timing element for sure. Um, you'll probably get a little bit of that. You could
Yeah.
luck out, you could get some big wins, but I don't think it's anything that you'll be able to like repetitively or be able to sustain over a long period of time. And that's the challenge. And I think it's the same reason you see a lot of people that hit the lottery end up broke. A lot of professional athletes, something happens to their career, end up broke. Artists, musicians, and it's because the problem is not the money. The problem is that we don't know how to basically manage that money, or how to live at that level, right? There's some skills that are lacking. There's some information that's lacking. So people end up back where they started, right? Because your money's always going to default back to your level of skill or your level of knowledge, right? So if you think about, here, not maybe I can like draw this up. Like
Oh, and
there's
real
all
quick, also bits. How would
yeah.
you describe yourself as a trader? Like, what kind are you long term? Do you
Yeah,
use trend? You're like, what would you say is your
I'm I'm
core?
I'm a higher time frame. I'm a higher time frame, man. I'm a higher time frame guy. Like I really like if I'm looking at something, I'm always kind of defaulting to the weekly time frame or the daily time frame. And I'm just trying to see like the larger picture of what's happening. And for me, like some of the best trades I can take are definitely the ones that if I get a good entry, I can hold it for a little while and I don't have to sit there and baby it. I like to do like scalps, like low time frame scalps, just when I'm bored or when I'm looking for just something to kind of scratch that itch. But for me, like the trades I like to take and I like to win are the higher time frame ones. Like if I could take a trade that like even on Solana here, if I was able to take a trade where I either shorted up here, I longed here, and I was able to play something like this out that goes between ranges, That to me is like a good trade. Those are the ones I like the ones that go the distance. Yeah,
What do
for
you
sure,
think
man.
about like what are sort of your main go-tos? I guess we'll just like run through a couple of these, and I'm curious
Yeah,
on some of the different tools that you also use. But when you're look at that crypto lamb shark in the house, yeah, absolutely, it's well with hunts for sure. So when you're trading, I know some people like there's a girl Tori something that she's like all over the internet, all over social media. She basically just used trend lines, and she uses support and resistance, and
yeah,
she's like killer at it.
yeah.
And I'm sitting here going, that is so beyond simple. But I know she makes money because she's public about all the trades and everything. And I'm like, holy crap. Is it really that simple? Can it be that simple? And I'm curious on your thoughts on that, as well as sort of some of the things that you incorporate in your strategy.
Yeah, I do think that over time, most people overcomplicate stuff, and then you end up kind of defaulting back to like super simple charts, right?
Mhm.
Um, One thing I've done over time is really lean into just volume-based trading, and it's just understanding where liquidity is. And like Algo here is like a really good example of one, right? I was just looking at Algo for someone, and first thing I did is I went to the weekly time frame, and I'm like, okay, here's all of Algo's history. Where are we now? We're right here. Is this a key level for any reason? And it's like, okay, well, look, you've got this zone here. Your volume profile is kind of telling you to pay attention there, but then you've also got like market structure here that's telling us that this is an important level, right? So very key level here for Algo. And what are we doing? We're sitting right on it, right? So now this is just a very simple way to identify, do I want to be looking for short opportunities here, or do I want to be looking for long opportunities here? Well, I would say that, based on this chart, knowing that this was previously support and it turned into resistance and we got above it and it's been supporting, I should default to wanting to look for long opportunities here
Yeah.
until something changes, and then this confirms as like resistance because we moved down under it and now we're like pushed up against it, much like this. Then I'd be like, okay, I'd probably need to be looking for short opportunities, and where's the next support below that I'd be interested in, right? So
Mhm.
yeah, I'm very much like, go to the high time frame, identify something as simple as like your high time frame support, high time frame resistance, right? Why would this up here be resistance? Well, maybe because we rejected from it, we supported. Here you were supporting, and then it flipped, and here you got a
Yeah.
rejection. So if this were to move back up, I'd be a little cautious up there again, right? I'm not looking to get it up here until we kind of get past this. Like this is the current zone we got to try and get past right here. So
Yeah, and I remember when I was learning, it was like go out, zoom out, and then when you're ready to
mhm,
make if you decided, okay, I think we're going long, I'm going to look for longs. That's when you zoom into
mhm.
the shorter time frames. That way you can
Yeah,
pinpoint a better entry point. I know some people don't do it as
100%.
much. They're like, yeah, it's somewhere around here. But I know some traders are like, no, I'd rather get cash in those extra pips if I can, get those extra points. And
Well, and I think a lot of it has to do also, like, to your point, we were chatting, I think a little bit before the stream started, but if you're just building a spot portfolio and you're looking, 5 to 10 years out or whatever, and you're not really looking to trade,
yeah,
um, this right here, I think is like highly valuable. Like you're here, you want to be adding, through all this chop, whatever's doing here, like this would be an amazing place for you to add to it, right?
mm,
Just based on this high time frame structure, like, and you're probably not going to get super picky about where exactly in this zone you're buying. If you wanted to, you zoom in, you say, okay,
yeah,
then I'm going to go into the daily. Are there any clues on the daily that maybe I need to be looking for here, right? So then you're zoomed in and you're paying attention to prior wicks and swing lows. You're paying attention to a different volume profile now because you're on a more zoomed in time frame. If you wanted to get even more zoomed in, you kind of keep playing the zoom in game. You say, okay, let me go in a little deeper, get a little more information. But yeah, Algo's one that for sure it's sitting in a high time frame support. So to me, like, it helps me to draw these on my chart. Like, I'll put the big green
mm,
zones and the big red zones because it right away tells me what my bias is. If I'm for whatever reason on a 5 minute chart, and this is all I'm instantly seeing, it doesn't matter what my emotional
yeah.
state is. It doesn't matter what stress level I'm dealing with. It doesn't matter how distracted I am. I'm seeing green behind me. So I'm instantly reminded that, ooh, you're in a high time frame support. Zoom out. Okay, yep. I don't need to be looking to short in here. I need to be looking to long in here. right?
Mm,
It instantly assigns me my bias and tells me, okay, I need to be looking for longs. How can I get long right now? How can I get a long entry on algo? Because we're in this green backdrop, right? So yeah.
yeah, makes sense. Well, what other things are you looking at like right now? It's like the title says like this cycle is the
Mhm.
hardest. It feels like it to me for sure. What are some things that you also lean into that give a little bit of help when you're looking at stuff? There are any indicators or tools or other platforms that you use that give you a bit of an edge?
Yeah, I mean, I stick a lot to just what's on TradingView, to be honest. There's a lot of like on-chain data and stuff like that that you could look at, but I think there's more than enough information just between all the indices, just between everything that you could pull up on here, all the different markets. So, for
Mm-hmm.
example, like I've got a bunch of tabs, and I've got some that are kind of like my defaults that don't change. So I've always got this first one. I've got the dollar on here. I've got S&P, Nasdaq. I've got volatility index. And then I've got, next to that, I've got my BTC and ETH chart, because I think that even if you're trading alts, you want to understand where BTC is, right? You want to understand what ETH is doing. So I've got those up as kind of like my defaults. These never go anywhere. I never put a different pair on here. It's always BTC on this one. It's always ETH. And then this one here, this is another layout that I have where I have like the total market caps, right? So I'm either looking at standard total, total 2, which excludes BTC, total 3, which excludes BTC and ETH, or I'm looking at the others chart, for basically everything except the top 10. And then I do like to look at, the like stablecoin dominance. I'll look at BTC and ETH dominance. I'll look at the dominance of others. So basically, this gives
We've been
clues.
talking about this a little bit as well. Is there
Yeah.
anything here that's giving you any, like what kind of things are you pulling from this recently? Like anything that's been helpful?
Well, this is the biggest thing here. We'll zoom into it. This is a good thing to look at. And let me just kind of clean up some of this noise here. So this is others divided by BTC, and Benjamin, what's his last name? Benjamin Cohen. He
Mhm.
talks a lot about this, right, into the cryptoverse, where
Yep.
he's constantly looking at this, and he's been saying, essentially everything's been bleeding into Bitcoin, and he's not wrong. This has been since 2021, essentially downtrending against BTC. He's absolutely right. Um, the only thing I'm paying attention to now is the fact that in my opinion, we're at a key level, and let me show you why. So if you were to put a channel on here, and I'm using the fib channel tool, but you could use just the standard parallel channel.
I
But
do
I
like the
like,
fibs, dude. I think for
yeah,
some people it's very confusing, but the tool, I don't know if you have like a quick explanation for what it is, but fibs I like. I know a lot of people don't use them, but they make a lot of sense for me.
it goes back to the idea that everything is math. And at the
Yeah.
end of the day, everything ends up being a pattern, a repeatable pattern, because it's all math. And the Fibonacci sequence just gives you essentially key levels based on math, right? Like you've got these percentages that these charts just tend to move to, like the 382, which is 38% level, the 618, which is a 61.8 level, the 0.5, which is your 50%. So and it's weird just because over time, if you go back and you back test a lot of this stuff, it does move right to key like fib levels. So, and you can build a bunch of different strategies. There's people that use like the extensions, people use the retracements. I think that's where there's a lot of room for people to kind of find how they want to use it. And then even like when people put a fib down, like some people started at the wick, some people started at the body, some people will use volume to tell you where to put it in. Like you start putting it in where volume starts coming in, and sometimes it's a little bit higher up than the body. So there's a bunch of different ways to like do a fib, right? But everyone kind of just finds like, okay, what can I back test that works for me, and then they use that. But it is interesting how it just tends to move with these fib lines. It's
Yeah.
it's very weird. Like it just does. Yeah. But I try not to. I try not to like lean into fibs as something I would trade based on. To me, it's more like of an indicator that I'll say, okay, is there some confluence there? Maybe that aligns with my zones. I'm more of a high time frame zone guy, right? So if there's some fib levels that align with my high time frame zones, then I get pretty interested, because that's confluence to me, right? At
Mhm.
that point, I'm like, okay, this is in a high time frame zone. It's supported by volume, and it happens to be like in the golden pocket or whatever, right? So then I'm like, okay, this is good stuff. But on this others chart, check this out. So if you grab these prior swings here and you connect them with the top of a channel, put the bottom of the channel on these lower swings, we're right back at the bottom of the channel. Okay. Which on its own is fine. You'd say, okay, on its own, like, sure, this could be coincidence. Like it doesn't have to mean anything. But then if we grab this low here and we put another channel on this as well, right? For the descending part of it. So basically this larger channel is like the volatility range that it's been in since, 18 through current. And then this smaller descending channel is basically 2021 forward. Well, now you're getting some confluence in that you're nearing the intersection point and basically the bottom of two channel ranges. Okay.
Wow.
So now we're at the bottom of the larger channel. We're nearing the bottom of this smaller channel, which is also a long time frame. We're in an area of high time frame support. Why do I say that? Because rejection here, like it struggled there, right? So I would have to assume that now that we're above it, we're going to find some support somewhere in here, right? So then I start adding it up. I'm like, okay, on the high time frame, we're in a higher time frame zone that could be supporting. We're nearing the bottom of this large ascending channel. We're nearing the bottom of this smaller descending channel. We're also in a low volume node on the volume profile.
I was about to bring up the volume actually right
Yep.
there. So perfect.
Yep. So you've got some confluence there. Let's pull up some. Yeah, look, you're seeing an increase of volume here as well compared to all this chop. You're starting to get a little more volume, even though it is decreasing here. So to me, I'm paying attention. And what I'm paying attention to here, what this chart basically tells us is this is others divided by BTC. So when this is trending down, this basically means that the altcoin market is weaker than Bitcoin. If this were to turn around here, that would signal that the altcoin market is about to outperform or show strength against Bitcoin, right? So then I'd be pretty interested in that. And it's not so much about like trying to time a bottom here. If you were to zoom in, you absolutely could probably find a reversal pattern here and look for structure change, right? But for me, it's more so about seeing like the higher time frame momentum start to change. So as I'm looking at this chart, I want to see this thing start to kind of, turn around here. Like if it's doing this at some point, I want it to start wanting to come up a little bit. And if you see something like this, definitely if it took out that swing high there and then it continued higher, I'd say something's changing and we need to be paying a lot of attention because we could be going into a legit altcoin cycle at that point. But we're not there yet. So this is still super early. It's me just looking at this and, like we were talking on the space and just saying, ooh, this is interesting. Like we haven't been at these levels in a while. There could, is something about to happen? Or the other scenario, right? Like as a trader, you kind of have to have both sides. You got to have a bullish and bearish case in your invalidations. Are we about to break this and continue lower? Right.
I'm not gonna lie, that feels a lot more.
Like it could be 100% could be, dude.
My energy, 100% could be. But I feel like every time if we try to put, and I guess I'm maybe not looking at the others chart. I'm mainly looking at BTC, which will inevitably lead everybody. But every time Bitcoin tries to push, I feel like we're getting weaker and weaker and weaker. And now we're hitting a point where when it hits 98K, I'm like, oh wow, look at that, nice. Versus 102 was that 3 days ago, and now it's 98. And now when it hits 96, I'm like, meh. And it used to be 96, and I was panicking. So I'm sitting here going, oh crap, are we getting desensitized to some of these pushes? Is this any kind of manipulation to just clear out any hope and then we send to Valhalla? Or does it just seem like it's following what it's been doing and we're just going to trend down to the 80s and we're just going to chill there for a few months?
Yeah, it's such an interesting thing. Like, and here we'll zoom out on BTC as well. And we'll take a look at like I hate that every time I zoom out. Here, let me turn this off actually, because there we go. This will make it a little cleaner. Okay. Yeah, I think with BTC, there's definitely a little bit of what's the word I'm looking for here? um, where we're kind of accepting that it's maybe hitting a little bit of resistance, right? Like that it's struggling a little bit. And so one of the guys that um, that I've learned from, he really does quite a bit of like storytelling when he's talking about these charts. And so he's always kind of looking at them and he's like, what's the story that this chart is telling you in terms of the buyers and the sellers and their sentiment,
Mm.
right? And so he always kind of tries to like draw the story out and he says, okay, here, we had a big push. Obviously, people were willing to buy like every dip. You could see it, right? Because they were buying higher. They were buying higher. They were constantly buying higher. And they were, the sales were also higher, meaning people were taking profits higher up, but they were buying these dips. And then here you had to have asked yourself, well, what changed that now, you had this little contraction here, right? Where, if you want to call this a quick little manipulated move or whatever, sure. But what happened here that the sellers now sold at the same level as before? Why didn't they wait to sell higher? If this thing is so bullish, why were they so eager to sell here at the same level that they sold before? Right.
Mm.
So these are the kind of things that you start saying, okay, well, why are they selling at the same level, or why are they suddenly selling lower? Right. As you're zooming in, that's like one thing that you pay attention to, right? And it's not just the key levels, it's also the behavior that's happening. It's like here you would have to ask, like, why aren't they buying? If they bought it up here, if people thought BTC at 102, 101 was a good deal, why didn't they buy it at 102 here? Why did they wait to buy at 97? Right?
Mm.
If it was such a good deal here, why didn't they support it back here again at that same price? How come now they bought instead at 92? Right?
Okay, can you even tell me the bull case right now? Because all I see is death on the buyers right now. All I'm seeing is lower lows and lower highs. Like it just doesn't look pretty on anything I look at. I look at Bitcoin and my gut says we're going down, but I'm also in a position in Bitcoin, like a long-term position that I don't really want to trade. But so I de-risked a little bit because I was like, dude, it does not seem like we have any firepower right now. I think we have to come back. And I know we had that big test, and people were like, that was the pivot back to give us some life. But it in my head when I understand that argument, but it happened so fast that I was like, was that what it was? Like I don't know if that's what I feel like. I would have preferred like a slower downtrend,
Right.
some distribution a little bit, and then we swing back up is what I was thinking. However, I think for a lot of people, they're waiting to see a full break of structure before they say, okay, we're going down. And I think that's where maybe that experience kicks in for a lot of them is they're like, I'm not claiming it's going bearish until we've given clear, like we're not going up because there's so many macro factors that should be bullish.
Yeah.
But every good announcement just leads to nothing but sells. And so I'm sitting here going, what are we supposed to do here?
Yeah. No, look, I don't think it's like you could certainly say if you zoom out enough, you could say this is worrisome. You never want to see these kind of rounded structures.
Yeah.
Because rounding usually means that the trend is changing slowly over time, right?
Yeah.
You get a rounded bottom, you're going higher. You get a rounded top, you're going lower. Like as a general rule, right? There's exceptions to that, but as a general rule, typically that's what this means. I will say though that right now, as long as BTC stays within these two ranges, it's just chopping. It's just chopping. Like there's nothing to be concerned about here. Like you're kind of chopping around, and it could do this for a while. It certainly could just come here, fake out, and then go back up, fake out. Like it could do this for a while. We don't know. The fact that we had this entire structure last year basically do that, right? Basically what it did for 8 months.
What are these months here though? What are these months? When did this chop begin?
Oh, so this was from the March top, right? So last year the market topped in March, and then it basically just moved from like 73K range down to, I mean, I would call it kind of like the 60K, even though it had some like wicks, some short term below that. It mainly held this box of like 60 to 73, right? It was mainly just chopping here. So you have to ask yourself, okay, if it did that for 8 months, could we do that here for 2-3 months? Could we do it for 5 months. Sure, it absolutely could happen. At some point, it's going to break out of here, right? Whether that's it breaks lower or it breaks higher, at some point it'll break out of here. But right now, it's just chopping around. And you know, if you're big into altcoins, you probably want this to chop around a little bit, because if this spends enough time kind of chopping here, you could see Bitcoin dominance take a breather, and you could see some liquidity flow back into the alts while this is kind of doing nothing, and you could get a little alt pump, right? You get a little mini rally. But yeah, I don't think BTC looks bad. Obviously, there is there's a double top structure here that we've been talking about that, right?
Yeah.
So this could be playing out. If it spends enough time doing this, you're gonna get what people are gonna call like a head and shoulder, right? If this keeps printing, retail's gonna start screaming head and shoulder at some point, which if it does form into head and shoulder, right? Shoulder, head, shoulder, like if it does turn into something like that at some point, I'm not saying it has to, I'm just saying if it does, people are going to start screaming, oh, head and shoulder. And where's the measured move? Down here somewhere, right? This is technically the measured move. So it could happen. Could be that this thing just hangs out a little bit, sweeps some lows, and then continues higher. That would be the bull case for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff.
But this would not be unhealthy. This would not be unhealthy for it to go down. I think it'd be very bullish. An opportunity to buy again or to enter long down here, like that would be incredible.
That's pretty much why I de-risked. I was like, if we come down, I absolutely must buy that dip, and I'm not. Yeah. I'd rather risk being out of the position now, even if we were to move to 120, if it means I could scoop here at these lower levels. That was kind of my trade-off there, and I didn't liquidate like a huge amount of the position, but I was like, I'd like some significant cash here to buy in if this comes down. Sure. So that's kind of my thesis there.
Well, even if you put a channel on this, right? Like let's say you grabbed this high here, grab the swing high from back here, put a channel on it. I'm just gonna grab like the body here because these wicks are kind of crazy. Where's the bottom of this channel? Down here, right?
Yeah. Wow, look at that.
So
interesting.
Yeah, and that's also where your volume, like, look, you've got this big gap in the volume. Where does this like shelf of volume start coming in? Roughly right here, right? So you would assume if it came down, there's enough volume here that would support price down here at these levels. Easy.
Wow, look at that. We talked about on the space with Dom. He's very confident in that we are now in an institutional BlackRock sponsored bull run, basically, and that there's just too much big money in. And it's all parked. It's not Bitcoin being traded amongst, me. He's like, it's much bigger institutions with a very long-term framework. And every single week, I'm seeing new videos surface of Mr. Larry Fink going on another show talking about Bitcoin. And I'm like, dude, are we missing something? Like, are we really missing the big picture here? Because everyone big is buying and they do not care. It seems like if we're at 99, 91, or 106. They're just buying. So I'm curious on your perspective on that. And then I see you have a bunch of other tabs as well. So I'm happy to go into another direction after that. But
dude, the way I'm like thinking about this is I think the institutional side gives more confidence to everyone who's believed in Bitcoin before the institutions that this asset class is not going away, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's a very simple way to look at it. But it doesn't mean that these traditional investors, these institutions, don't buy the tops of markets. And it doesn't mean that they're not participating in other markets where they've been on the wrong side of a market move, because it absolutely happens, right? Just look at gold, silver markets, look at commodities, look at equities. It all corrects. Right. None of that has really gone flat. It still has huge corrections. Even if you look at like the S&P, for example, look, I mean, this right here was a 30% correction in that market, right? 30% right here. Back here you had 35%. So it absolutely has big moves down. What would what would a move like that look like today? Somewhere down here. That's a 30%er, right? This is a 20%er right there.
Yep.
So absolutely. I don't believe that just because you've got people with money suddenly interested in something that means that it's not going to correct anymore. I've not seen enough evidence for that yet. I think absolutely there's the potential that you could have a big downturn in the market like this. Here's something interesting as well. I'll call it out real quick. So shout out to ASX Trader. He made a video about this and he's absolutely spot on. So usually before these big dips in the market, you know, one of the things that I've talked about a lot, like that I like to trade is I like to trade essentially trap entries. So what's a trap here? And I'll draw it out like up here. So let's say you've got price trading like in this range, like doing some stuff, right? And you've got a clear ceiling and you've got a clear floor, right? For where you're trading. A trap entry is essentially when price moves out, like it's going to break out and then just quickly comes back in only to continue lower. This was a trap, right? Because what did it do? It swept all this liquidity up here, right? It hunted any kind of stops that were up here, but it was basically a huge fake out to the upside. And then it continues in the opposite direction.
Yeah, that was I was going to say that looks exactly like when I first started trading. I was learning smart money and it's watching for institutional candles. I think that's exactly what I learned. Was you're waiting, you're ready for the entry, but you're waiting for the break first. You get in at that swing high where you're like, this is the fake out, and then you write it down. That's pretty much the strategy I learned. I think it looks exactly like it, at least.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. Like this is so a lot of people, for example, if price is trading like this, and this is, you know, up here, this is your resistance. Down here, you've got your support, right? And you're kind of in the middle of it. Like people are trying to guess right here in the middle. Where's this thing going? But you've got no edge. You've got zero edge in here because it's a 50-50. It could go up, it could go down. And then just because it goes up doesn't mean it's not going to reject here because it already rejected a few times. Just because it goes down doesn't mean it's just going to bounce. So you've got no edge here. For me, the edge is when you find those moves where they try and fake people out, right? So like this, and then quickly going back into the channel, I would be interested in longing. Why? Because all it did was fake out these prior lows, right? And then quickly reclaimed it. I would want to long and at least try and get it up to the top of the channel. Same thing with the opposite. If it came up here and then quickly gets back into the channel, I would want to long. I don't want to front run this move per se, right? I don't want to front run it. But if it goes up and it quickly comes back down, I'm happy to enter somewhere down here after it comes back into the channel, put my stop loss above that, and see if I can't get it down to at least the bottom of the channel, if not for continuation lower, right? So the reason I say this is one of the common ways that markets top is they do that. They do a trap and then they continue down. They trap some liquidity up there and then it continues in the opposite direction. Here's an example that you'll quickly see. Here, let's okay. You ready for this?
I'm ready.
Okay, check this out. So this was 2021, right? Late 21 going into 22.
And this is a week chart, right?
I'm on the weekly chart. Yep. Okay. You had essentially this ceiling here, right? And here we'll go into like a daily time frame for this to illustrate it. But you essentially had this this ceiling here in the market that it wasn't really getting much above. And then what did it do?
Bang.
What is that? There's your trap.
There it is. Even on a weekly chart. So this must have taken that in that weekly little zone up there. That must have been on like a daily or an hourly chart. That must have taken a little while.
This
but that's why the power of like zooming out and zooming in. Like that's where the power comes in.
And look at the beauty of that though. Like clearly went above your resistance, right? So everyone here was probably like, oh, we're breaking out, we're going so much higher, so amazing, right? And then immediately comes back below, and not immediately, like after a few days or whatever, a week, comes back below it, back tests it again as resistance, says, nope, this is still resistance. And then we're going down. And look, this happened here, okay, back in 22. And then look at that drop. I mean, just horrible, right? Like months. This was it, right? Okay.
Wow.
What happened here in 2020?
Jeez, dude.
What happened here in 2020?
That one was violent.
Same thing. Yeah,
That
but
was a
same thing, right?
violent
Like
drop.
you had a top in the market, it came back up, pushed against it. What did you do here? Trapped a bunch of traders on the wrong side, immediately took a dump, right? Horrible. Okay.
And that's where the like, if you go back to that real quick, bits,
Mhm.
like that's when I was talking about the trend lines. Like you can, if you
Yeah.
were to draw trend lines all the way up and you see the
Mhm.
breaker structure and you're like, oh wait, there's no more power here. There's no more, we have
Yep.
no more rocket fuel. There's only one place this could go, and that's straight down here. And the example before, when it retested that high and dropped off again, for people
Mhm.
who are super beginner, the reason that happens is because you're like basically saying, okay, we're gonna try, and you're like, oh, we didn't get there, and we're trying again, didn't get there.
Mhm.
For me, in crypto land at least, that's a clear sign that this is not,
Mhm.
this has no strength. And that's why I think I start to lean into shorts. And that's why I like you, Minx, people who like and are comfortable shorting, because my brain picks up on shorts way better than it picks up on longs. I don't know if that's just the way my brain works, but my brain
That's
can
how
tell
mine
me,
is, man.
like, there's some more energy here. I feel exhausted, so I feel like other
Mhm.
people might feel exhausted. And maybe that's a little bit of inexperience, but my brain picks up on it really quickly.
Yeah. I do think it's like something that, like, I don't think anyone chooses like, ooh, I want to be bearish and I want to go out and only short. Look, like if you recognize that you've got an edge in shorting over longing, you'd be dumb not to lean into that, in my opinion.
Mm,
Like, you know what I mean? You got to play whatever is your strength, right? And so, yeah, I mean, I think this is like one of the patterns that I like to look for. Is I like to look for these tops where we hit a new high, right? Because this was a new high compared to back here. You made a new all-time high, and then you kind of chop at it for a little while. Um, Tell me this doesn't look like a double top, right? Do you see that?
wow. Wow.
Okay, so look at this. Call this BTC at 73K. Then it did months of whatever, broke out. This is BTC at 100, 110K, right? Double topping. What if we did a move up, grab liquidity, and then just turn down? Like it could happen, right? But those are the things I'd be looking for, right?
Yeah.
Not sitting here praying for that to happen, but I'm very much aware of it because I want to be caught, just not paying attention. That makes sense.
Yeah. That makes sense. Makes sense.
So same thing, like you go back and you see this pattern right before all these drops. Same thing, new all-time high, quick little move above it, right? You get a quick little move above it, and then an instant drop, right? Same thing here. Look, this was 2018. Same thing. Okay, 2018 market had topped right here. What did you get? Quick little trap above, dump.
Wow. That's
Okay.
insane.
And you can continually go back and you'll find the same type of pattern just going back. Like you continue to find this like divergence that happens in this little fake out. So I share this, right? Because look where we're at now in traditional markets in the S&P. So you had this high that got put in here in December. We came right back up to it again in January here, late Jan. What is the what's the possibility that we don't do that?
I know. That's literally what my brain has been thinking.
So that's the risk. Does it have to do that? No, but the fact that we already did the double top, and now we're going to push up. You got to ask yourself, okay, we did the double top. Here's the double top. Are we about to get the push above and then only to roll over? And if this happens, bringing it back to crypto, if this happens in traditional markets, it's not going to be good for crypto either, right?
Oh, yeah.
What would it look like on BTC? I don't know. I mean, what did we just say? Double top, right? Okay. You've got a clear high of the market here. So what if you got that all of a sudden? You got a last little push up and then you got that. Could happen, right? Where would I want to short? Like if you were asking me like, okay, where would you want to short BTC or how would you want to short it? This would be the best short. This would be the absolute best short,
And by the way, during that time, for anyone who's on Twitter, you will be seeing insane bull posting if we were to break that
Oh
structure.
my God. Yes. Like, dude,
it would be insane.
During all of this, talk about like the peak level bear mockery. Peak.
Oh, yeah.
Like absolute bears are wrecked, blah, blah, blah. Like we're going so much higher. Like if you did this, we're going to 500K. Like that's the exact sentiment you'd be getting, right? Oh my God, it's going to 1 million. And then this would happen and there'd be silence in the timeline, right? So that's if something like that played out. The opposite is true as if it did it to the downside, right? Like if it were down here, and look, this is actually a great segue into going back to the topic of this stream. Like these are the things you have to learn. You have to be watching out for this, because this is how they trap people on the wrong side there potentially. It doesn't mean this couldn't flip, right? Like this is the bear case. The bull case is it comes back up here, spends a little time up here, chops, and then continues significantly higher, right? Absolutely good change of structure. This would be bullish. Send it. No big deal.
Yeah.
But I'm cautious until it flips that, because a little push up like that and quickly coming back into this range, oof, that would not be good. So we know that up here you'd have like max euphoria, just timeline would be just totally.
And it could last a while, right? Like could
it could
actually
be days, weeks,
120, and then we get wrecked.
It could.
In that case, you would almost be okay sort of playing almost both games, where you're like, okay, let me stay in the spot position, but let me also set up some shorts in case we do crash overnight or something.
Yeah. And I think that, like looking forward, that's something to pay attention to, right? Like if it comes up here, make a note already that the risk is that it can't establish price acceptance above that, and that you just need to be cautious. It doesn't mean you need to instantly exit, because it could absolutely be getting ready to flip this and continue higher, but you just need to be paying attention and cautious and pay attention to the sentiment. If you start getting some confluence in some things like that, where like people are instantly mocking all the bears and calling out these ridiculous targets, and everyone's euphoric, everyone is telling you to buy now up here at these levels, we get to stuff like that, you got to be a little bit careful, right? The same thing is going to happen, Cade, if this does roll over, right? Let's say this thing does roll over and it comes down into these lower levels, you're going to get the opposite of that. You're going to get people that are saying, oh my God, we're going so much lower. It's over. We're going so much lower. We need to get out. This is horrible. Bitcoin's broken. Crypto's broken. The cycle is broken.
Bitcoin is broken.
Yeah, no, like this is literally the sentiment you're going to get down here. If this happens down here, people are going to be losing their minds, and you need to be thinking, how do I get long? This is the buying opportunity of the year. How do I get long down here? Especially if it starts dipping here, like into like 60, deeper into this support zone. If it were to start doing that, people are like, oh, it broke the trend line. It broke the channel. It's over. Dude, my favorite entries for longs are when it's outside. It's deviating outside of the channel, and then it just does this. It just absolutely just smashes everyone on the comeback. So same thing happens on both sides. Like you just have to be paying attention to that. You get max fear, and then you get max euphoria, you get max greed, right? But yeah, if it comes down here, this is why I like drawing my zones. This tells me I need to be bullish. I need to be looking for longs. Red up here tells me I need to be careful. I need to be potentially looking for shorts, right?
Oh, man, that would be crazy if it did that. I mean, it would be peak bearishness. It would be insanely bad. Our spaces would drop off. People would leave. And then just right when they leave, a couple months later, they'd be like, wait, why is Bitcoin back at 120? That's literally what happens. They go, well, let me get back in. And then everyone gets back in. And then Bitcoin dominance tapers off. And then they miss their altcoin entry too. And then it's just blood everywhere in the streets all over again.
Yeah, for sure, man.
But anyways, I see you have a few other tabs as well. Is there anything else that you wanted to pull up that you thought might be interesting?
Yeah, I mean, I've been looking at a couple of these other coins. Solana is another interesting one where, I think we've talked a lot about Solana and it potentially underperforming, even though there's a lot of expectations to Solana, right? Like if we were to break this down, I think it's definitely showing that it's struggling to build some price acceptance above this like $260 level.
Yeah.
which, interestingly enough, that was your 2021 high, right? And it has not really been able to sustain a move above that. But I think as long as it's above here, like this 120 level, that's a very strong support. Even here above, kind of this mid range here, like 160, it technically should be finding some support. I would love, for the bull case, I would love for Solana to be able to kind of defend this $200 valuation and be able to stay above that. But it just seems like it's struggling a little bit here. It just really does. It seems like it's having a hard time kind of holding that level. So we'll have to just kind of wait, see what it's doing there. But on the high time frame, one thing to call out with Sol, and let me get rid of these boxes too. No, wrong one. Give me a sec here, Kate. Boom. There we go. Clean it up some. One thing to call out with Sol is it has been like showing some weakening in the trend. And what I mean by that is there's quite a bit of like divergence that's happening on Solana on a high time frame. So for example, if you were starting down here at the bottom, okay, notice that from the lows, the RSI was convergent with it, meaning it was following in the same step, step by step. It was kind of following in the same footsteps as price. Price made a low, made a high, made a higher low. Okay, RSI made a low, went up, made a higher low. You see that, right? And then here, let me show you. Let me maximize that a little bit here. Maybe I make that. There we go. And then price came back, made a higher high, RSI also convergent, makes a higher high, higher low, higher low. So it's not diverging. They're doing the same thing, right? Then here you saw this big push up, right? And we made this high up here on Sol. RSI did the same thing, made a big high. And then as it's coming down, it goes for another swing here, right? Comes down, goes for another swing. And then you kind of start to see this break down a little bit, because here, while it's kind of chopping, it comes back up and it makes a higher high, but our RSI has continued to downtrend, and it's divergent from the whole thing. So RSI is kind of telling us that this is like weakening over a long period of time, over a sustained period of time. Just something to be cautious of, man. And the fact that it's doing this weakening near the prior all-time highs is not a good thing. It should be, it should be trying to get above that and flipping this whole zone. So I'm a little bit concerned up here. But again, until it really changes this lower support, I don't know that there's like reason to panic yet. But then you've also got like the social element of it. I think there's a lot of people that are just really bullish on Sol right now, from a fundamental perspective, and price doesn't always have to move with fundamentals. And what I mean by that is, for example, Bitcoin's been the same Bitcoin that it's always been. Nothing's really changed in terms of Bitcoin other than its adoption. But its price has varied drastically over the years, right? It's been worth very little. It's been worth a lot, right? And so fundamentally, I think that you could have something like Solana that's maybe great technology, it's fast, it's cheap, but the price doesn't have to necessarily continue higher, up only or all the time, right? You could have periods where there's there's discounts in the market for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. That's some great points. Are there I was gonna ask, can't remember. It was something to do with, damn, I cannot remember. I literally cannot remember what I was gonna ask. But that is really interesting, because it looks like it's kind of across the board, that same energy. And it's tough sometimes because sometimes I don't know if I can trust my like altcoin speculation, because it's so contingent on Bitcoin, that sometimes I just look at Bitcoin. I'm like, is there even any point in looking at some of these other charts? Because they almost tail everything that Bitcoin does, aside from small moves outside of it, where maybe there's, for some reason, something pumps. But for the most part, everything just trails Bitcoin. Like for the average person, 100%. Do you think they spend their time on Bitcoin, or do you think there's some benefit to also tracking the other altcoins?
Dude, I mean, I think if we've learned anything from this last this last year is Bitcoin is substantially stronger than the alt market, and
Yeah.
it's more resilient. That even if it does have corrections, it's just not as brutal as what we're seeing with the altcoin market. So, look, it's an interesting topic because I think that you have to kind of decide, um, you know, what strategy you're trying to play. Are you trying to play the short term? Are you trying to play the long term? Are you starting with a little bit of capital? Are you starting with a lot of capital? Are you maybe a little more risk on, or are you just much more conservative? I
Hmm.
think I think Bitcoin is 100% the conservative play,
Yeah.
with still, plenty of upside, but it's a conservative play in that there's very little chance it's going to go to zero. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to say it's impossible because I don't know. Things could break, something could happen, but very little chance that it's going to go to zero. Um, it- do we see altcoins that we can make that same statement for? I don't know, man. After seeing like the Terra Luna thing, after seeing the whole FTX debacle, there's a lot of coins that were top 10, top 50 back in 2018, 2019 that are nowhere to be found today,
Yeah.
basically. So I think altcoins are just always going to be much, much riskier, and tech moves so fast that Bitcoin's not really trying to be like a tech play. It's not trying to be software. It's
Mhm.
it's a store of value. It's a way for people to save and opt out of a financial system that currently is broken in a lot of ways. And so I just think I think the value that it offers is just totally different from altcoins. Altcoins is like I'm trying to find the next winner.
Yeah.
The next vehicle that's going to take me from A to B like super fast. And so
Yep.
there's a lot of gambling that happens, and I'm a big fan of like utility plays, as you know, but even those, I think absolutely you could build something. Like, I mean, let's look at like some of these OG legacy coins. Like, you got Polkadot, you've got Cardano, you've got XRP. A lot of these, you would technically put them in like a utility bucket. You'd say they're
Yeah.
they're actually building infrastructure, they're doing something. But like, I don't know, like stable coins has changed a lot of the ways that we look at now, on demand liquidity, and we look at cross border payments. We look at the ability to move money around quickly and cheaply. Well, you could do
Mhm.
that with USDC. So do we need some of these other projects that are doing that and trying to do partnerships with banks and stuff? Like, that's
Mhm.
a great question. I don't know. Like, what is the value proposition now that we have stable coins on the level that we do? Um, so I think that even with altcoins, now that we're starting to see, how easy it is for people to basically launch a coin,
Yeah.
and to use AI to help them code something, or even
Mhm.
just to use existing protocols and just like improve on it a little bit. There's a lot of competition in the market, man. So I think there's a bit of like a first mover's advantage combined with what's hot, like what's sexy right now. But it's also short lived. So yeah, I guess my answer to that is I think like you can't go wrong if you're in crypto with focusing on BTC exclusively. I think you're probably going to do pretty good. And even if you're starting out as a trader, if you just focus on trading BTC, like you're probably going to do all right. There's plenty of
I'm gonna start with that.
opportunity.
I think when I
Yeah,
start going into the crypto ones, I will likely stick with Bitcoin, and I'll
yeah,
probably. I mean, I'm sure some of like the main coins just purely for like because other people like would be interested in like some of the data you find. Oh,
yeah.
dude, that's what I was gonna ask. I know we're probably coming up on time here, but is there any other like information slash data points you go to? I know you mentioned you're mainly sticking on the charts and some of those, the four charts you pulled up as well
Sure.
earlier. But are there any other points you go to, any news outlets or any websites that you use that give you a little bit of extra of an edge, or do you mainly just stick to these charts?
Nah, I mainly stick to the charts, man. I think like if I'm getting any kind of news related stuff, is I'm watching sentiment on crypto Twitter. I'm watching what people are sharing. Um, like definitely all like the FOMC meetings, like paying attention to that stuff, I think is important, but it's more about the sentiment towards those outcomes and less so about the outcomes themselves.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mainly just stick to the charts, man. Like, I'm looking at what I can quickly get a pulse from. I'm looking at, the different market caps, just trying to identify, okay, where's the market at right now? Is it more likely to go up? Is it more likely to go down? I try and just kind of stay here, and for good or for bad, like I know there's maybe some like edge that I might not be capturing, and that's okay. But I want to do something that I can duplicate, I guess is the best way to put it. And I don't know that I can duplicate trying to react to news or trying to react to other things like that over time. But I
I
can
see.
duplicate having like a trade strategy that, it's not that I'm trying to capture every move, but I can identify if this happens on the chart, historically I've been able to trade it
Yeah.
in this way. And so I'm therefore waiting for those setups over and over.
Yeah. It's like the
And
idea of
sometimes there's a lot of patience in waiting for those, Kate. Like
yeah.
it does mean that you sit on your hands and you're just like, nope, I mean, I just can't do nothing with this right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the things that someone had brought up was just for beginners, just watching price action and just taking notes as an FOMC meeting happens. Like, why are all these memes about Jerome Powell walking up and saying good afternoon, then everything crashed? Like, why is that? Like, just studying them and watching the past 10, just going back in the chart and seeing what happened, what actually happened after certain events. And be like, okay, when these sort of conferences or when these sort of events happen, Bitcoin tends to react like this.
Yeah.
7 times out of 10, that's interesting. Like just data you're trying to give yourself. That way you have a little bit of a sixth sense. And then, I agree. I think in a lot of ways, I think even if you have all the extra information, the charts sort of play the same tunes a lot of times. And you're kind of like, well, is there any reason to pay attention? Like, does it matter what exactly happened at this announcement? Or is it more important that, hey, this just happens to come at the exact same resistance level that it always comes to at this kind of point in a market with this kind of event? And that's where the math is beautiful, because people are like, the lines don't make sense. I'm like, dude, they actually do. Like, there's a reason it bounces every time, and the trend lines work. Not every time, but the trend lines, there's something to it. Like, it bounces every time, like, why is that? It can't just be pure luck. There's psychological levels even sometimes,
Yeah. It's all patterns, man. It's all just math, and it's all just human behavior that's driving all of this stuff. Like when you're zooming in and you're looking for stuff. So here's a good example. I drew this little box like yesterday when price was still up here somewhere. And I was like, look, algo is interesting to me, like in this little box, right? Where are we at now? We're in the box, right? It's weird, man. And it's not like, it's not rocket science. I didn't, I don't need to have like a 200 IQ to figure this out. It's just, you build a system that lets you find a little bit of edge, and it doesn't work all the time, and it's not perfect, and you still make mistakes, and you still suffer losses, but you're just looking for things that give you a little advantage over time, and they help you win. But I mean, look, I literally was like, I drew this box, price was up here, and I said, if it swept these lows, if it probably came down into this level, I might be interested for longs, right? And where's it at now? It's down there. So to me, it's not even about being predictive. It's about identifying where I'm willing to play. That's really what TA is. TA is not me trying to guess where the market's going. Even though you can have a lot of fun on that on CT and just, giving your hot takes and watching people lose their mind over it. But TA is really identifying where you have an edge and where you're willing to play. And that's basically it. It's not about price has to, it's not about price is going to, it's about if price comes into this little box, I'm interested. It's not price has to, it's not price is going to come into the box. It's, if it were to come into this box, I might be interested, right? Now, obviously there's like a skill to identifying the little boxes and to knowing, because you could just draw a box anywhere and it doesn't mean it's going to do anything. Right. But how do you then develop a skill that lets you find the key areas where you're willing to play? And then you just wait. You just sit on your hands and you wait. You set alerts. You do what you got to do. But then you got to be willing to step up to bat when the market gives you your trade. The market comes here. You said you would be willing to trade. Then you should technically take that trade. It's not about, but it's still looking kind of bearish. No. When I was doing my analysis, I drew this box and I said that if it came to this box, there was a chance it could bounce and I would be willing to long it. It's in the box, it's bouncing. Why did I not take that trade? That should be the question you would ask yourself. Why should I not take this trade? Right. And if nothing invalidates that, then you take the trade.
Yeah, because I think trading is, everyone says it, like trading is literally 90% manage your emotions and risk and just pure risk management. Setting your stop loss at not a stupid number, but something that will, not wreck you and won't liquidate your portfolio, or if you're a prop firm, 100%. Liquidating your prop firm portfolio and making you lose the account. Yeah, interesting stuff, dude. Do you have any, by the way, before we wrap, do you have any thoughts on the prop firm trading, using that money for beginner traders as well? I always thought it's better to risk your own money because I feel like more pain, and I don't mind going through pain and fire for the first year to learn something if I think it's going to be long term. But there is something to be said about not. It's kind of like leverage trading. You're risking more. You're risking, therefore, also potentially getting more money, but it's not even your money, and you risk less technically because you can set those stop losses. But I also think, like, is that too short-sighted? Is that cutting the line and not going to set up good patterns in your brain?
Yeah, I don't think you should jump into using a prop firm right away. It definitely is not something a beginner is gonna be able to do successfully, in my opinion. You're gonna end up paying a lot of money for the tests to try and get the funded account. And that money could have gone into you actually just learning to trade, right? Like on an exchange or on chain or whatever you're doing. I think the biggest thing is learning to be okay with starting where you are. Like, don't worry about where other people are. Worry about where you are. Where are you starting at? And be okay with that. If you're starting with $200, be okay with the fact that you're starting with $200. And that means you're not going to make $200 on those $200 every day.
Yeah.
Right. Focus on making $20 on that $200.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do, and then the next day, make $22. Like, just over time, you're going to grow that account. But the biggest lesson that most traders will have to learn the hard way, and I say this from experience, is there are no shortcuts. There are no shortcuts, man. Like, you gotta be able to stick to it and stay in the game over a long period of time, doing little repetitive actions and just getting disciplined at that. And when you deviate from that plan, when you break your plan and you deviate from your strategy, those are the moments where you typically take the big setbacks, the losses, and it's always happened for me that way. When I know that I'm taking a trade that I should not be taking, it always ends up coming back and biting you in the rear. And you're like, man, I knew I shouldn't have taken that trade. I knew I shouldn't have,
Yeah.
So that's the biggest thing, man, is, and I don't know that, prop firms help you build a lot of structure and a lot of discipline because you have to. Otherwise, you don't meet the rules. You end up getting a lot of drawdown, and then you get your account taken away from you, and you got to pay the qualification fee again to earn an account back.
I feel like that's like just as like not nerve wracking, but just like the idea, I blew another account. Like, I blew another account. I feel like that's almost worse than just being like, I lost a few $100, whatever. But like blowing accounts left and right, I'm like, I feel like there's maybe a better way, at least in the very beginning when you're first starting to get into those trades. Might be a better strategy.
And leverage is the other part of it, Kate. When I was also trying to learn initially, dude, I was playing with 100x leverage, 50x leverage, and I was getting wrecked. Like, you'd have a good winner, and then you'd lose it in the next trade, because you were trying to like double up every time. Dude, I had to dial that leverage way down.
Really?
and just recognize that if I can't become consistent at making a little bit of money consistently, then there's no way I'm going to be able to make a lot of money consistently. It's just not going to work out. Not realistic.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
So yeah, I don't know. I think prop firms are a great tool, but I would almost say, like, go out and practice a little bit, learn a little bit on your own, and get to the point where you can grow an account over time, and then go explore. Like, if you still don't have access to enough capital, then go explore a prop firm, because they'll give you the capital, but you need to be proficient in your ability to pass that test and to maintain that account. That's the hard part.
Yeah, it doesn't just end there once you do well for a couple days.
Yeah. No.
It's a long-term skill set. So
and also I would say, like, on that topic, don't pay someone else to pass the test for you, because there are people who do that. They'll say, oh, pay me and I'll pass the test for you.
right.
You're going to end up losing the account, and then you paid for the account and you paid for the guy and you lost both of those, right? It's a waste. Go out and level up a little bit, and then excuse me, and then when you're starting to get pretty good at it, then come explore it. So
yeah, absolutely, bro. Is there any things you want to leave the audience with before we wrap? Any last thoughts or things that you think might be worth bringing up or mentioning?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, like, kind of on topic with everything we've been talking about, is just recognize that if you're gonna be in this space for a long period of time, you're gonna have to learn some skills. You're gonna have to get some time in the markets, and you're gonna go through some periods of good, and you're gonna go through some periods of not so good, and that's okay. But yeah, be okay with taking the time. Be okay with being patient about it and not trying to rush the process. It is a process. You're gonna go through periods where you think you've got it all figured out, and then you realize that you don't, and you mess up, and you're gonna go through periods where you even doubt, like, man, like, can I even do this? Because I've been there. I've been there where you're just like, do I keep trying? Do I keep showing up every day? And that just takes time. You just got to be consistent enough over time that you say, yeah, you know what? I've proven to myself that even though I'm still an idiot and I'm still going to make some bad trades and I'm still going to make some stupid decisions, there's definitely something here. Like, I've learned some things. I've got, one or two good patterns that I can repeat over time that are profitable. And then you start waiting on those higher probability trades, and you start taking less trades that aren't within that strategy. Right. And I think that's probably the biggest single thing that helps me over time, is not taking the trades that just don't fit with what I found works for me. Even if other people are taking it, even if it's moving like crazy, even if everyone's talking about it, like, if it's not what I play, then I don't do it. I just simply don't. Right. So, yeah, there's like a bit of like, you got to be at peace with that you're not going to catch them all. You're not trying to compete with anyone else. You're trying to do you, and it's okay. Find what works for you, build your strategy, and just stick to that, man. I think that's like the single biggest piece of advice that I would give anyone. And it's a process, man. It's an absolute process. I'm trying to teach my kids right now all this stuff, and it's yeah. They've got accounts, man. And same thing. They'll go through some wins, and then they lose a lot of money, and it's just golly, like. But I want them to figure it out, man.
That's amazing. That's amazing, dude. Well, I appreciate you coming on. And by the way, for anyone who's watching, if you enjoyed the stream, please do give follow bits right above our faces. You can come click on his accounts and follow him. And if you're on YouTube, in the description below our faces, you can find him. Highly recommend, because Twitter is pretty much the place to be, and quick, easy ways to give feedback and stuff. So that's usually where it's just easier. You're going to get a lot more of us than on YouTube, just in general. So definitely give him a follow and retweet the stream, of course, if you enjoyed it. Definitely want to try and do. I'm trying to do just lots of video content, learn how to trade, and do more about and all that stuff, and get better, and hopefully bring people along the journey as well, so people don't get fully wrecked in this cycle, and they have at least a chance to survive, because there's going to be crazy gains to be made, but you can't just spray and guess and pray, and it doesn't work. It's just not working like that anymore. Okay, it's possible now that we're at the bottom of the range. It might be starting from literally around these next couple months. It might be possible, but I still think that's a terrible strategy moving forward. And the second you have a reversal, you're going to panic and sell your position, because you're going to be like, okay, we didn't go as high as fast as I wanted. So, but if you don't know anything, you're not going to know anything, and everyone else who you're trading against does. And that's why you lose, because there are people who do understand and they're trading the same charts you're trading, and you think you're going to outtrade them without knowing anything. And that's just ludicrous.
Well, and then people end up following other people into trades, and that's always like super risky.
Yeah.
You really shouldn't take anyone else's trade. Like you can use other people's analysis, but you should use that to then go and do your own analysis. So for example, I've still got some people that I like to watch their content, or I like to watch what they post, but it's not because I'm using their charts or their analysis to go make trades. It's
Right.
because then that leads me back to my charts, and then I start seeing how did they get to that conclusion? Like why are they drawing this here? Like what are they looking at? So then
Yeah.
I try and take that to then kind of challenge my own bias and figure out if I'm right or if I'm wrong.
Yep.
But yeah, like I think there's a lot of people that are just looking for a handout. They want someone to basically hand them a chart with an entry and an exit and where they're going to take profit, and it just doesn't work that way. Like,
or they
you
just
might
want
get
to know
lucky.
trading this week. They just want to get it this week. And I'm like, it does not work like that.
No,
Like, you just have to sit through a full
Years.
cycle and
Yeah.
watch.
Yeah, man. It's a process for sure. I thought it was going to be like this thing that I was going to master right away. And
Yeah.
dude, every day I'm just trying to like get better than yesterday and get more edge. Like that's it.
It's a lifelong process. I think it's exciting, but I'm trying to take it that way. I think if you're trying to force it, it may or may not work because it's difficult and it requires a lot of time. I think especially in the beginning, to just figure out and get sturdy footing. I spent like 6-7 hours a day watching videos for a year, and waking up at freaking 7 a.m. because I was in Washington State on the West Coast to catch the morning sessions and like do all that stuff. Like I suffered through that year and I hated it. And at the end of the year, I just gave it up and said I'll come back to it. And when I do, I'll have this foundation that will be helpful. But right now, it's not the time. Now we're at a point where I realize you cannot fluff your way through anymore. It's just too many coins. There's too many, and it's probably going to just go. I mean, I've seen this perspective all over the place. So the world is just getting more and more degen in general. Like it's just like allowing for opportunities, and people are creating casinos so there can be more, and everything's becoming capitalized on, like Polytrade. There's just so many opportunities for it that it would be so foolish for you to not want to try and learn this if you have any kind of interest. So that's kind of where my interest was piqued, was that like you just can't get lucky in the same way. You can, but it's not the same. It's a different game now, it feels. And I don't know. It's just what it feels like to me for this cycle. I mean, it's just getting harder. People are learning and people are getting more interested younger. And those kids who are like 12, 13 are like, I want to trade. And I'm like, what the hell? Like these kids are starting at 13 and they're actually going to, and maybe some of them are actually going to learn this stuff. So it's time, it's time.
Yeah. My kids are, I got some teenagers, and, I'm hoping to give them an edge, when they're a little older. So yeah, I think that's the true challenge right now is, crypto has kind of made finance, I think, a little more attractive to non, the typical like investor, the Wall Street investor that we're typically used to, right? So it's like we've got everyday people, kids, parents, older people that are getting interested in finance, interested in just markets in general, analysis, historical data, all this type of stuff. So yeah, man, I think like over time, you're absolutely right. It is getting harder to win in this market unless you're leveling up over time consistently, because you're getting new people that are coming in. And then now with institutions, we're getting like professional traders that are coming in here. Like they have just all the data, like they have it all, right? They've got models that are just modeling out everything. They're giving them all these different scenarios. Like they've got it all, man. They've got all the algos, they've got everything. So, it's definitely, I think, going to be harder. And then the fact that, there's so much content available now. Like most people are that are in crypto can look at a chart and tell you if it's trending up or trending down, like some of the basic stuff. So I would say like some things are losing their edge as well, because everyone knows it. And this is kind of been my concern with the whole 4-year cycle narrative, is like, well, everybody's expecting it. How is that going to play out? But it'll be yet to be seen.
Across the board, across industries. Like it used to be Messi, Ronaldo. That was it. There was like no one who was even in the conversation now. Bellingham, Mbappe. There's like 32 people that are like top 3, top 5, top 1. And I'm like, okay, the game's the strategy's sort of shifting. There's not just one person on a pedestal a million light years away. There are people all leveling up because they're watching these people from the very, very early ages, and there's opportunities and access now. There's courses out there they can learn. There's private coaches you can get. There's so many opportunities now that I just feel like it's an opportunity, I think, for a lot of people that they could level up to a point where there's maybe not as possible quickly, and not quickly is probably the worst word to use here because I don't want people to think like that, but you do have a chance here to really capitalize. And so we still got probably a year. And now that the institutions are here, people have said it's possible we don't see these 75% corrections. Maybe they're closer to 30, 40%, in which case that would be insane because that would be an entirely new paradigm for Bitcoin. And I'm not sure about the rest of crypto, but at least for Bitcoin, it can get really, really crazy here. And so in my head, I just want to be ready in case that happens, because when that happens, I want to be good to go and sort of, I don't want to be learning all the fundamentals and basics when that exciting time gets here, because it's rapidly approaching, bro. Time's moving fast.
100%. And I guess the good thing for the new person coming in is that they're coming in and there's an abundance of information. There's not a lack of it. I remember, there was a period where there was a handful of like crypto courses that you could take. Now there's tons. So you might think I'm at a disadvantage because I'm coming in late, but you're kind of at an advantage in the sense that the information is all there. The task is that you got to be able to sit down and filter through all of that and find out what's quality and what's not. But you definitely have more data and more information and more tools at your disposal today than a lot of us did when we were first entering. And there's people that are even there's people that have been in here twice as long as I have in this space. And like hearing stories of the early Bitcoiners and how they were like sending Bitcoin, like it's just crazy, man. So that's part of it, is like you don't have the advantage of being early anymore, but you have the advantage of coming into a more mature ecosystem where there's plenty of information, plenty of resources, plenty of tools, plenty of communities that you can join. So really, I mean, like you're not going to come in here and be at a disadvantage because of any of those things. It's just now you got to step up and be willing to want it bad enough to go out there and find the right information and be able to go through that quickly, and then just to stay consistent.
Consistency is king. Well, we went over time, way over, so apologies, Bits. I hope of course, you could message me in the private chat if you had to go, but I appreciate you coming on a little bit extra. I think the mindset stuff is super important. So
I feel like this was like really high level, kind of like, I don't know how we went that way, but I'm okay with it. Like sometimes trading is not just like, let's just look at the data and let's look at the the patterns, or let's look at the real technical stuff. Sometimes it is kind of a step back and here's how you need to be thinking about this stuff, or here's what you need to be looking for.
Definitely, man. All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on. And again, like I said earlier, please give him a follow. And if you are in our spaces, he's a regular on our Market Talk spaces as well. So you can get a whole lot more from there. And he probably jumps in other people's spaces as well. However, definitely recommend that you follow and then retweet the stream if you enjoyed it. We have streams and spaces every single day here at Wolf. We've got a RWA space in like an hour or so, and we've got a Market Talk space in a couple hours or something like that. So we'll see you all there for that one, fam. Talk to you later. Peace.